Hello, fellow walking bags of water. Welcome to Get in the Sea, the only podcast available where you're likely to get a sexual disease just from listening to it. That's just how dirty and filthy this shit is. Yes, indeed, it's puerile, silly, and downright fucking dumb in places. But we will do our level best to try and offer some engaging content. And if not, fuck it. I don't give a shit. I've been drinking most of the day, and I'll continue drinking most of the evening. So hey, as you well know by now, the concept is very simple. I, the Lord of all fevers and plague, invite various guests, onto the show to discuss three subject matters that come under particular headings. These headings are audio, visual, and random. Audio can be anything from a song to a band to a children's nursery rhyme, or perhaps my guests' adoration of Muzak because they just like hanging around lifts. Oh, and that's elevators to my American friends, you fucking dicks. Visual is something that can be an ocular assault, be it a film, a TV, or perhaps a piece of art, or perhaps my guests' voyeuristic tendencies because they just enjoy peepholes. Random gives our guests a chance to discuss anything they want, which, knowing what they get up to in their private time, is a really bad idea. But hey, as long as they have a logical reason for bringing it to my attention, I will hear them. I will hear their arguments and decide whether that particular item they are bringing forth should get in the fucking sea or not. Because I am the Lord of all fevers and plagues, just for today. My guest is Allan. Allan was once described as the next big thing by Time magazine. He was lauded for his work in creating lovely little bits of egg that you find in mini Scotch eggs. You know those lovely little bits? No? Fuck you. He spends a lot of his time living between two slices of bread in the bread bin somewhere outside London, which he says is snug and lovely. He's also exceptionally good with electronics and likes to make heavy-sounding music in various forms for his own amusement. Only one of these statements is true. I will let you, the diabolical public, decide. Allan, how are you, sir?
Hey, Dave. I'm good.
Excellent.
Yes.
Just to further showcase, mate, the plummeting depths that this shithole of a conversation could sink to in the next hour or so, can you please answer me this question?
Yeah.
Sedimentary rock or Chris Rock?
So, that's tough because Chris Rock is hilarious.
Is he though?
But also, I'm a big fan of dinosaurs. And without that, we wouldn't know they existed. So, I'm going to split it 50-50.
I have no comeback for that, so fucking fair play to you, sir. So I've known Allan for a few years, ladies and gentlemen. He's always full of interesting information, and I'm looking forward to the subjects he's brought forth. So without further ado, the first subject is audio. Allan, what have you got for me, mate?
I've gone for Jeff Wayne's musical War of the Worlds.
All right.
Yeah, because, you asked me what songs do I love, what songs do I hate. And
I didn't. I technically asked audio, mate, and that could be anything. So.
Well, yeah, okay, true. Audio. I think probably every artist I like has done at least one or two songs that I fucking hate, so... Or in fact, entire albums in some cases.
Yeah, no, fair play.
Every terrible artist has at least one good song. But War of the Worlds, it's to me, it's a fantastic album. It's quite emotive because it came out when I was a kid, and so it's, I think, probably my first memory of actually just putting headphones on and listening to an album over and over again.
The immersive experience.
Yeah, of being 5 years old and just having it on vinyl, giant headphones in.
5 years old, really?
Well, I was reading up to earlier. It came out in 78, and I was born in 76. So, yeah, I think by then I was into music quite early on, and thankfully my mum and dad had a pretty good record collection.
Fucking hell, fair play to you, sir.
I may have been older than 5, to be fair, but I do remember being very small and having giant headphones on.
No, I respect that, man.
And there was 70s carpet everywhere, so
Did you have that awesome, weird curtains as well? Those ones.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Those curtains which are just what the fuck are those curtains?
The orange and weird paisley patterns, all the carpet, all the wallpaper, everything. My parents' house was very, very 70s inspired, even though I think by that time it must have been the early 80s. But
so people hold on to that shit for a long time, and I respect that. I remember my parents held on to that for quite a long time, and even when they moved into new places, it just seemed to follow us. Like, it just wouldn't die.
Well, you've seen my lounge. It looks like it's from the 70s now.
Yeah, but it looks good though, man. It's a smorgasbord of time traveling goodness, man. For one of a better term. I like your living room, man. Ladies and gentlemen, for the uneducated or the people who are under the age of 30, what we're talking about is War of the Worlds, which is a sci-fi novel by H.G. Wells, which I actually didn't know was originally written and released in the late 1800s. I thought it was later than that. That really spun me out when I was doing my little bit of research. So technically it came out in 1896. 1896. That is... Fuck, that really weirded me out. But once I got over that... No, seriously, it did, man. I was just I swear it was later than that.
No one did anything.
Yeah, no, not at all. But I swear it was later than that. I was convinced that it was later than that. And then when I read about it, I was just like, damn, I can't believe it was literally before... the turn of the 19th century or whatever, 20th century or whatever you want to word it, the 1900s. So, but upon my research, I learned a lot more about it than, I initially knew. So it's been variously interpreted as commentary on evolutionary theory, British imperialism, Victorian superstitions, fears and prejudices. And a great quote, which I came across is that Wells is reported to have said that the plot for it arose from a discussion with his brother about the catastrophic effect the British had on the indigenous Tasmanians, which, upon further research, that was a horrific time. Another classic example of British imperialism. But Wells wondered what would have happened if the Martians did to Britain what the British did to the Tasmanians. Which was obviously a rabbit hole I didn't really want to go down, but of course I ended up going down anyway. But it's interesting where things come from, man. And I do want to get onto the soundtrack, and I will do, but I do have a little bit more blab. So you surely, Alan, you know about this, about the 1938 dramatized radio show.
Yeah, by Orson Welles.
Yeah. Which apparently caused panic to its listeners because they thought it was real. I appreciate that has been exaggerated a lot somewhat over the years, and people were like, oh my god, half of America and then half of the world believed it was real. But I think the truth of the matter was that the actual radio station that launched it initially didn't particularly have a high group of listeners, so that's been disputed. But the whole idea of it just made me laugh. People just going, oh my god, this is happening, we're being invaded by aliens, oh my god.
I think, like, in hindsight, we can look at it and think, like, those people were fucking idiots. But I don't think that's entirely fair, because what Orson Welles did... Well, okay, what...
It was convincing, mate. It was convincing.
Yeah. Well, the book is presented kind of as a diary. And Orson Welles, like, translated his version into basically a news broadcast. Yeah. So he was reporting it as a factual event. And now, up until that point, like, radio plays weren't really like that. Like, you had like a narrator, you had actors. He just did it as a straight, completely po-faced, this is what's actually happening. Yeah. And I can understand how people tuning in halfway through, listening to this guy who sounds like a news presenter saying this is what's actually happening, might lose the plot a bit. And,
right.
So, I'm going to give them some credibility. Not forget the amount of shit that people believe now and get angry about now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, fair point. Fair point.
Think, like, one of my favourite ones is Britain's Got Talent, where the dog won it. Now, that's fucking amazing, because that means the most talented person in Britain is a dog. But then, secondly, people then found out later that the last trick the dog did was actually done by its like twin brother, who was a stunt double, and they were outraged. So it's like, you've been duped by a dog.
I'm outraged.
And people were complaining about it. So, you know,
Yeah,
I'm not going to like rip into 1930s America.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Fair point. I will. I will not expand on that. I think you've put in for some very good points for it. So let's get back to the crux of it, which is the album. Jeff Wayne's phenomenal progressive rock slab of goodness. So when it came out, towards the end of that decade, prog rock was a thing. So many bands, such craziness. But Jeff Wayne was one of those people who, from what I understand, he didn't exactly do a huge amount before this. He'd done bits and bobs, contributed to other things, but this, he managed to get the backing, get the funding, and he managed to call in just an incredible group of actors and band people and the backing band who were playing it. Just incredible, man. It's just like, so Richard Burton, he was really, on it.
Like, yeah, well, I mean, he's like really the central piece of it all.
What a voice, though.
Yeah, that's the thing. If it wasn't for that just astoundingly booming, impressive voice that you can only really get through drinking and smoking. Yeah, he just sounds amazing, man. It's just, I think that's one of those things that like still resonates with me. Like when you put it on and it's like, no one would have believed, like that opening line.
Yeah.
This takes me right back, and it's all because of his just gorgeous voice.
It's a lot to be said about that, man. There's a lot to be said about just the ability to deliver something with the human voice, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, so who else is on it? So Justin Hayward, obviously, from the Moody Blues. David Essex.
Phil Lynott.
Yeah, Phil Lynott. Obviously, you know, he was obviously much missed now. He died way too young. Julie Covington, who those who don't know, sung the original "Don't Cry for Me" Argentina.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I was obviously doing my wormhole of research, and so I was listening to her versions compared to other people's versions, and I was like, yeah, damn, she's incredible. Okay, so let's talk about the album itself, mate. So, okay, so obviously everyone remembers the dun 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 dun, right?
Yeah.
So, how did that affect you when you first listened to it? What did that do for you? Did it blow your tiny mind?
Yeah, it did. That track is like momentous, and that's why everyone knows it. But what really blew my mind was all the minor background stuff, like the sound design, there's just always something going on. Like, I mean, obviously there's always something going on. It's a musical, but like even when the music kind of drops down and you've just got dialogue, there's like little scratchy noises and synthesizer noises and all kinds of stuff that's just there that really builds the atmosphere. And the bit that everyone knows is fantastic, but it's the build up to that really like sets it off. The fact that there's like creepy little unnerving things happening and like scratchy little bass noises and synths going the whole time through.
There's a lot to be said for sound design, man. I mean, I don't think people give the art of sound design in whatever medium it is in the credit it's due. You know what I mean? I just like, people go, oh, this composer's the best composer because of this, that, and the other, because I love this film. But then, you know, when you break things down, a good sound designer knows how to really bring out a scene.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, sure, you can have that music going, but without that, as you said, those scratchy noises, those little blurbs of synthy, noisy goodness, you know, it's just like, it can make or break something.
It totally does, and I think it's probably infuriating from the point of view of the sound designers, and it's I guess similar to like special effects, which is you don't notice it. Like the perfect sound design is one that you're really not paying attention to. Definitely, like if you're watching a film and like you're really paying attention to the sound, it's probably because it's shit. as where if you've got like little effects happening here and there and they just seem to be right, you don't really pay attention. It just adds to the atmosphere.
Yeah, 100%.
With this, nothing ever feels like it's really vying for your attention up until the moment when the music like clearly demands your attention. So yeah, I think that's for me like one of the greatest parts of it is they really understood the contrast. They really understood how to just let things simmer in the background. Yeah, it's just very, very well put together. It's beautifully recorded, beautifully engineered, and Jeff Wayne clearly knows his shit.
Yeah, 100%. I can't argue with that at all. So, like, perhaps the main single that was taken from the album, Forever Autumn. I'm sure you know which song I'm talking about.
Yeah, but I can't remember who sings it. Is that David Essex sings that one?
No, I believe it's Justin Hayward.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, from the Moody Blues. Again, any prog fan who's listening to this who knows better, do feel free to email me and correct me, and I'll tell you to fuck off. Because I don't care really. But Forever Warm is a lovely song. I'm pretty sure it's Justin Hayward, but a great song. From what I understand, the song wasn't even technically going to be on the album because the original piece of music that Jeff Wayne wrote was for an advert written with two other people. I think it was for like Sweets or something in America, and they had this like melody, and then Jeff Wayne continued to create this piece, and from what I understood, he was like, oh yeah, I need like a love song on this album, and he basically just took that song, put some lyrics to it, and then bunged it on the album. And I was like, well, fair play to you, man.
Yeah.
Why not?
I mean, that is the time-honored tradition of like the most famous tracks and the tracks that everyone loves are always knocked up in 10 minutes, or they're just something that you've had kicking around for years.
Yeah.
And you spend forever writing these other ones that no one gives a shit about.
That's a true story. I think as musicians ourselves, we know that. You know, I spent like 6 months building this song. Yeah, great, whatever.
Yeah, but thought about it too much.
I mean, for a start, there's no way this is going in the sea, mate. I mean, the fact you brought me a bit of prog is clearly a winner in my books.
Crossed my mind that it
yeah,
was prog,
no, 100%,
but
mate.
it is,
No.
isn't it?
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%, man, 100%.
I mean, like I know we're concentrating on the audio, but I mean, I also very much love the visual aspect to it.
Do it. Tell me more.
Me as like say I was a kid, like just listening to it on headphones over and over again, and I just spend the whole time flicking through the gatefold vinyl, which had all the amazing illustrations of the Martians and the attacks on the city and the red weed, and like so much love and attention went into that. Yeah, it really showed like this is a thing that he had an idea and he just kind of kept working on it until it was basically perfect.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
There's no way I can deny that. I mean, I think it took a year to record. From what I've looked into, just under a shy of a year. I'm like, that's some going, mate. I mean, I appreciate in the late 70s, technology is not as whatever as we're fortunate enough to be handling today. Where we've got our high processors and this, that, and the other, but. Still, for a year's work, it's as you said earlier. It sounds great. The mix is great. The mastering is great. The engineering is great. All those little nuances which make up the album just all add to it. And I can't imagine sitting there constantly going through it and meticulously analysing it and going, "Nah, that little scratchy bit's too loud. That little is too low." And just like, we need more, whatever. We need more strings on this bit. That's an undertaking and a half, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's I don't know how much money they must have spent making it, but like a year of studio time, a full orchestra.
Right.
Clearly was like quite a bit of cash in the bank to make this thing, or he was risking his house or something. I don't know. But
no, it's
definitely paid off.
It's a good question, man. Yeah, oh yeah, that's it. which leads me on to my next point about the recent West End revivals about it.
Yeah.
So we've had everybody from Liam Neeson to God, who else has played characters in it? I was looking at the sort of like the West End productions and who's been in it, but I was quite amazed the amount of people who have been or played a character in it, and I was like, that's absolutely insane. Some incredible vocalists, not some, and also some very surprising vocalists who have obviously tried out for it that I wouldn't initially associate with wanting to do something like this. But again, much like us, they're probably of that age where they listened to it as a child or their parents listened to it and went, yeah, I want to be involved in this as an adult. I've now honed my craft and I want to go. Okay, so on a related note, the shit show that is the films.
Yeah. So which one? I've seen the one from the 60s.
Okay, I'll give that one all right. I'll give that one a pass.
Yeah, that I'm pretty into that one because it's not entirely faithful to the story, but considering it, the special effects were pretty cutting edge.
Yep.
Again, the sound design in that really good. Like the sound of the alien attack sort of ray. That's pretty iconic now.
The red death ray of fucking heat ray of doom. And you're like, yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. The one with what's the guy's name? Tom.
Yeah.
Him.
Yeah.
Who is he? Tom Cruise.
The rage is already rising in his name.
Oh fuck! That was shit.
Yeah,
that was shit. Wasn't that Spielberg? I think Spielberg did that.
I don't know, mate. I don't know who directed it, but I think just Tom Cruise being in it just annoyed me immensely, and I don't know what it is about Tom Cruise which annoys me. Oh, he's a Scientologist. That's what annoys me.
I mean that shouldn't matter whether the film's good or not because
I'm joking.
No, I didn't like that. The recent BBC production, I wasn't that blown away by, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, like visually, that they got it pretty good, but I don't know the way they kind of added on the extra bit to the story where they're sort of a bit in the future after the events have happened that are in the original story. Did you watch the BBC version?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it could have been good, and it wasn't. And then there's like a version on the Sci-Fi Channel, which I watched one episode of, and was like, this is fucking terrible.
Was it the Asylum put that together, didn't they? As in that those group of people and producers and directors who have been remaking all the horror films over the last 10 years. I heard that was shit as well. What did you think of it?
Haven't seen that one.
All right. I think it's on YouTube. You can watch it on YouTube in its entirety.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's generally not a good sign then, is it?
Yeah, I came across it and I was like, maybe I'll watch this. Then I was just like, nah, I'd rather stab myself in the face with my own penis. So I didn't bother watching it, to be honest.
Get a couple of ribs removed, then you can.
Mate, I've already done that. So home surgery, mate, is the way forward. Alan, I'm going to wrap up War of the Worlds, mate. There is no way this is going in the sea, dude. This is just it's been a lovely trip down memory lane. I remember my parents had this as well. Do you have any closing notes on this? Because it's basically it's going to sit on the shore, just enjoying a nice ice cream.
That's fine.
Maybe playing with its bucket and spade. So yeah.
My closing notes would be if you've never listened to the original version, then listen to it. And listen to it with massive headphones on at full volume.
There you go. Look forward to deafening yourself, children. So make sure you turn up really loud and make sure you develop a sense of tinnitus for the coming years. But in all seriousness, do give it a listen. It is a journey and a half. Alan's a big fan, I'm a fan, and that's pretty much should be good enough for you. It's time for a toilet break and to powder my nose and to make myself look pretty for part 2. Bye. So I am still with Alan, and I'm still me, the Lord of everything, as you well know, you fucks. Alan's brought me a delicious morsel for the next one. I have a lot of time for this particular thing, and I ended up observing it again once he had brought it forth to me, and it still hits home as hard as it did before, possibly for different reasons now, but I still enjoy it. Alan, your choice for visual is?
The film Up from Pixar.
Yeah.
Which is it's just lovely, isn't it?
It is lovely, mate. It really is. As I said to you before we started recording again, I mean, it's a great film with so many lovely moments, but my main recollection is that intro montage, which, you know, quite literally broke my heart.
Yeah.
You know, there's no way around it, you know, and I had to put it back together with sticky tape. It's just so potent, you know. For those who have not seen Up by Pixar, why? For a start, yes, it's a cartoon. B, you're wrong for not watching it. Get on it. It came out in 2009. It's one of the best loved animated films of all time. It grossed it grossed $800 million worldwide. I know that's not a example on why a film does well, but it's a reason why people went back to see it multiple times. You know, this is adults and kids. Sure, yeah, like a lot of Pixar stuff and a lot of animations, you know, there's stuff there for kids and there's stuff there for adults, you know. But as that aforementioned montage bit just blew me away. Alan, I'm babbling. You carry on, mate.
I mean, like, there's a lot about this film that's just awesome. And you're right. It's a cartoon and it's aimed, I suppose, essentially at kids. But I also think it's a bit of a cop out when, like, these films like this get described as being like, well, there's bits for kids and there's bits for adults. Like, it's just a good film. Like, it's good for both adults and kids because it's a really good film, not because they made a children's film and then chucked in a couple of adult jokes to keep the parents amused. Like, it's a beautifully written script. It's very well thought through, and like, there's just so much about it that resonates with people of all ages because I think it's such an intelligently written film.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think what I was more aiming at is that kids are not going to get certain points of it. And I remember specifically going to see it with one of my nieces, and she was squirming away during a particular scene while I was blubbering, you know. So I guess that was what my point was. You know, I'm not saying they deliberately wrote it that way, and of course they didn't. They just wrote a fantastic piece of art, you know, and there's no way around it.
For me, what I like about it, probably most, well, all right, so the character development I think is really good. The characters have incredibly well-rounded, realistic sort of attitudes to everything. Like, nothing about it feels like they're just sort of two sort of puppets that have been chucked in the middle of an hilarious situation. The way they sort of act is very grown up.
Like us two, you mean?
Exactly.
Except for not hilarious at all.
I need to address that it isn't without its faults, right? So as much as I love this film, there's not really any women in it. Like, it failed the Bechdel test fucking terribly. So, like, the central female character is his wife, who's dead within 10 minutes, and then the only other female character is the bird that they're chasing, the literal bird, who they call Kevin because they don't know it's a girl. So that's a bit sucky. All right, I'm not, you know, but aside from that, you've got like the classic trope of the miserable old guy and the young kid, except in this film, he's not a miserable old guy. He's sad, and they explain why. And that's like a kind of background you don't normally get. Like, you normally get presented with characters like him as being these old curmudgeons who the kid has to win over.
Yeah.
And, you know, try to show him that actually life's all right. And this story works the complete opposite way. This guy's heartbroken, and the kid is like having a real shitty time because his family is split up and his dad's an arsehole. And they go on this great adventure, and the thing that they really get out of the adventure is that your heroes, you don't know them. They turn out to be arseholes because they're normal people. These great plans and adventures that you spend your entire life making, they probably don't happen. It doesn't really matter. And then basically, so many films like this would have a really happy ending, would have...
Oh, yeah, the Hollywood ending, mate. The Hollywood ending pisses me off, yeah.
Yeah, but instead they go on this great adventure. They discover that, like, things are sort of, not awful, but not as brilliant as they hoped. The main character, what's his name? Carl.
Yeah.
He meets his childhood hero, who's a nasty man. And in retrospect, he always was going to be a nasty man. He was like one of the great hunters who'd go off to the colonies and shoot things. Like, those guys were dicks.
Lord Montgomery,
they were never great people.
Yeah.
So it's a real, it's a real amazing story of like how you can really hang on to this stuff and like delude yourself. And then when you see reality, it's like, well, actually, that's not so great, is it? Maybe we should reassess things. Yeah. And it's sweet how it ends because, it's like they're now friends of each other. They've got an awesome dog. They've got an airship. But they're quite content just to eat ice cream and hang out with one another, which I think is just such a wonderful story. And that's why I think, like, it's when I said earlier about, like, it's not a kid's film with some adult jokes in, because, like, you get quite a lot of those kids' films where they'll put in some very, like, half-shielded sex joke so the parents can go, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
That isn't this. This is genuinely a film about an old guy who realizes that, the sadness he's feeling is because of what he's lost, but also because he's holding on to stuff that he shouldn't do. And it's like a really grown-up thing. And it is a thing that also kids need to learn. It's no good telling kids that everything you ever try, you'll achieve.
Yeah.
It is good to say, like, still go out and try it, but don't be downhearted if things turn out differently.
Yeah.
So I think it is a very grown-up film.
I totally respect everything you said there, mate. I think that's absolutely fine. Yeah. Again, I there's no way this is going in the sea, mate. It's just lovely to go through this film again. As I said, I watched it again recently, and it's so cleverly done. There is so many good bits that, of course, upon second viewing, I didn't quite notice. I mean, I saw it in the cinema, and as I said earlier, I was just like, there's so many things you just don't really pay attention to because when you go through it again, your brain seems to, well, for me at least, seems to be able to summon forth a lot of films I've seen before, but I then seem to be able to put them on like how do I put it? Almost like a second screen, for want of a better term. And then I can still focus on the main screen. I'm like, I didn't notice that before. I didn't notice that bit of dialogue. I didn't notice that bit of the score. I didn't notice that bit of sound design. And it just heightens things even more. And I love that. And so it's got one of my favourite composers, there's no doubt. Michael Giacchino is one of my favourite composers of film scoring gurus. There's no doubt about it. And he just had a really good sense of things. There's no over-the-top blown use of fucking horns and brass and strings and nonsense like that. Yeah, sure, there's moments where it needed it, but it's just such a lovely score. And again, upon revisiting it, that sort of thing only adds to it even more. And I really enjoyed it the first time, mate, and I think I enjoyed it even more going through it the second time. I mean, when was the last time you watched it?
It's got to be a couple of years ago now. But, yeah, I mean, I saw it at the cinema. I bought the DVD. I've watched it a number of times.
No, fair play, man. I respect that. Yeah, I've not watched it as many times as you, but I have no qualms with this at all. I mean, we've not been talking about it for a very long time at all, but I don't have anything else to add to it. There's no way this is going in the sea. This is up on the deck chair, fucking lounging in the sun way back at the top of the beach, man. It's just chilling out, enjoying itself, mate. Do you have anything to add to this, sir?
I mean, I could talk about it for ages, to be honest, because it's such a good film.
Carry on, man. Do it. If dude, this is what this is all for. And worst case scenario, I'll cut it together and it would be fine. You carry on, man.
Like one of the things I really like about it is the bad guy
Yeah, fair.
is he is again, it's like he's he's a caricature in a lot of respects, but he's still realistic. He's by the time they meet him, he's a decrepit old man who he is essentially like the other old guy. You've got two old guys who are refusing to move on, and it's destroying their lives. But Charles F. Muntz, the Great Hunter? I mean, in the end, spoiler alert, it kills him. Like the pursuit of the bird that he's spent like the last 50 years trying to find. But it's like he's such a good character. He's not sounds very stupid. He's not cartoonish. Like you can see bits of him that seem so genuine, like so completely consumed by his quest that he's ignoring the fact that he now lives by himself in an airship full of dogs and hasn't had human contact in 50 years and has pissed his entire life away and has become completely paranoid of every other person that he might even see.
Do you think that's also a good would you say analogy, for want of a better term, about the pursuit of goals at the expense of everything else, and then realizing that you've not achieved that, and what the fuck? What's happened to the last 30 years of your life?
Yeah, I mean that is literally all the film's about, because even the little boy, Russell, his whole reasoning for being there in the first place is he's trying to get badges for his wilderness adventurers badge or something. So it is, all the three main characters, it is all about them trying to achieve something, and Doug, the dog who can speak and just says squirrel all the time.
Yeah, squirrel.
He's got a goal, he's got a task. It is all about like occasionally stopping to check in. Are you really sure you should be doing this? Or, don't give up on your dreams, but also don't fuck everything else in the process.
Yeah, an assessment of your goals and whether they're actually worth it, I think, is the other.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is, what is it you're actually trying to achieve? That's the thing. I mean, like, say he finally caught the bird, what would happen? If Charles F. Muntz did finally catch Kevin the bird and take him back to prove that he existed, they'd be like, all right, thanks. Now go find us something else, because that's all that ever happened to him.
Yeah.
He'd find a thing, then he'd go and find another thing. But he's become obsessed about this bird that he never managed to prove exists. All the people who gave a shit are dead. No one left cares, but he's still pursuing this massive self-destructive journey.
It's an interesting analysis on, it's almost like a psychological analysis on the human need for endeavor and the completion of goals. I think how people can become obsessed about things, and as we've discussed, it's sometimes the inability just to go, do you know what, I gave it a go, it's not working out. I think it's probably good for my own health and the health of everyone around me if I just go, time for a break, time to go and take up fucking, I don't know, growing a Venus flytrap. I don't know, whatever, but...
Yeah, try something else. Think of all the things that you could be enjoying yourself doing rather than being stressed out about all the things that you're failing to do.
Yeah, variety is the spice of life, right? So, yeah, there might be another bird out there.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. It would have made no difference whatever he brought back. He chose to become obsessed over this one thing because he couldn't find it. No one ever questioned him on anything else that he brought back. So, I think there's a lot in there in that film that is, like, as an adult, it resonates with you because we've all spent a lot of time wasted on futile pursuits. And as a kid, I think it's a really good film because it needs to be taught to children that not everything works out 100%. The life is full of these little bumps, and that's what makes it exciting, instead of presenting this constant Disney-ish, and it is bizarre because this is a Disney film, but presenting this kind of Disney type of image that there's perfection out there if you just look for it hard enough.
Yeah. It's it starts off fine. The struggle, the really bad bit, and the big payoff with the huge major resolve. It doesn't really work that way. And I think with the advent of Pixar and then bringing forth their interpretation of what an animation should be, I'm not saying it wasn't done before, but bringing in all these sort of themes, which makes you actually think a lot more, was a game changer.
Pixar luckily got to a point where they were so well respected and powerful that they could do what they want. And I think, like Up, it might have been made by another studio, but it wouldn't have become as popular, I don't think, because it didn't have all the backing of Disney and the endless amounts of money they can. But I can't honestly imagine another sort of studio other than Pixar pitching this film that's basically a kid's film about a guy who fills his house with balloons, where the story is ultimately like he's quite depressed and a widower and his dreams are about to be crushed, especially as like the first 15 minutes of the film makes everybody cry because it is fucking heartbreaking.
I'd love to have been around that table at like Disney HQ when they pitched that to him, and then just watching everybody go, what the fuck? As everybody at Pixar is just nodding their heads going, yeah, this is our next shit, man. This is the next big thing. Trust us.
Yeah, but they were right, So
yeah, $800 million, right? So
absolutely. And as a side note, I mean, let's be fair, Pixar have made some bad films. Cars is atrocious. But
yeah.
But Pixar were also weirdly the people that revived Disney's hand-drawn animation. Like Disney was trying to throw out hand-drawn animation in favor of CGI, and then Pixar were like, no, we're not doing that. We're getting the hand-drawn stuff back. So although all the Pixar films are still CGI, and I can't remember the name of which one of the CEOs of Pixar it is, but yeah, he took over the hand-drawn animation department in Disney. And now they're back making that stuff, and good.
I want to say John Lasseter. Okay, yeah.
I don't think it's John Lasseter.
No, John Lasseter. That's the boy. No, not him.
I don't think so. It might be, but
no. It's all good. We can go down the.
We can Wikipedia it later, but yeah.
Yeah. We'll worry about that later.
It just kind of proves that they're generally right and Disney are wrong when it comes to cartoons.
Dude, yeah, that's it's a great film, and I hope anybody who's listening to this podcast, if you're sad enough to listen to this podcast, has checked out the film, and if not, please do.
Yes.
Disney Pixar's Up came out in 2009, I believe. It's just a magical film. Yep. I think I'm going to wrap this particular part up. Unless you've got anything else to add, Alan.
Also watch Ratatouille and Wall-E.
Ratatouille's Wall-E. Oh, dude.
Those are the good Pixar ones. Don't watch Cars.
Yeah. Let's not watch Cars or Planes or Boats or the other spin-offs that they had.
Sadly, the dinosaur one wasn't very good either. That was, for me personally, that was very, very sad.
I bet you're quite crushed about that one.
It really wasn't a good film.
Just on the by, ladies and gentlemen, Alan is a big dinosaur fan. He's a dinosaur fan. So anyway, Up has got his own little beachside chateau. It's chilling out way away from the beach, so it's definitely not going in the sea, mate. So thank you very much for bringing that to my attention. We are now going to do what we usually do in these episodes. We try to play a song from a band, basically. A band, an artist, something that someone wants to get involved in, and they've sent us to us and been like, hey, play our music on your shitty podcast. Yeah, here's a song called Counting by the band Dials. Dials is made up of Ruben Crendel and his wife, who have not had the pleasure of meeting. I know Ruben from the progressive rock, progressive metal scene many moons ago, and we've just sort of stayed in contact via the powers of the internet. So anyway, this is Dials with the song Counting. And I really like the lyrics in this song. It's really potent. Enjoy.
Don't tell me, it's a short time. Don't tell me, it's a short time. I'm counting the days, I'm counting the hours. This is my list, I will achieve. Remind myself how to believe. Focus your mind, learn to meditate. Body and soul will rejuvenate. Stay on track, try not to distract yourself from time that you won't get back. Devote myself to another life. Chose to be a mother and a wife. This is my reason to forget about the time that I should have spent working so hard to live the dream. Instead, lament what I could have been. Don't tell me it's only a short time. I'm counting the days, I'm counting the hours. Don't tell me it's only a short time. I'm counting the days, I'm counting the This is the time I will become. All of my fears have come and gone. You're ahead, I'm not far behind. That thought gives me some peace of mind. Don't tell me it's only a short time. I'm counting the days, I'm counting the hours. Don't tell me it's only a short time. I'm counting the days, I'm counting the hours. Don't tell me it's only a short time. I'm counting the days, I'm counting the hours. Don't tell me it's only a short time. I'm counting the days, I'm counting the hours. Don't tell me it's only a short time. I'm counting the days, I'm counting the hours. Don't tell me it's only a short time. I'm counting the days, I'm counting the hours.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the lovely Dials with Counting. Please check them out. Information will be on the podcast webpage, so you can check out links and all. Yeah, good, lovely song. Let's do part 3, shall we? Yes! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to part 3. I'm still with Alan, and I am still the Lord of all fevers and plagues. And speaking of such things, Alan has brought to me a very interesting subject for his random choice. He's brought forth anti-vaxxers, and he's very much against it. So just as a preface to this, people who are not sure what anti-vaxxers are, I suggest you research it for a start. But I guess I want to sort of do a little blurb about it because I feel quite strongly about this, and I'm guessing Alan bringing it to the plate, he does too. There are two lines of thinking about this. So I'm going to try and do a best summation that I can of it. Again, I'm not saying I'm a fucking expert on it. I don't work for the World Health Organization. I am not a doctor. I'm not any of that sort of thing. But, so I've done a bit of research, of course, so hopefully this makes a lot of sense. So, vaccine hesitancy is also known as anti-vaccination or anti-vax. It's a reluctance or refusal to be vaccinated or to have one's children vaccinated against contagious diseases, despite the availability of vaccination services. It was identified by the World Health Organization as one of the biggest global threats of 2019. The term encompasses a lot of things, from outright refusal to vaccinate, delaying vaccinations, accepting vaccines but remaining uncertain about their use, or using certain vaccines but not others. As I said, it covers a lot of reasoning and a lot of things why. The arguments against vaccination are often contradicted by overwhelming scientific consensus about the safety and the efficiency of the vaccines. Hesitancy primarily results from public debates around the medical, ethical, and legal issues related to the vaccines. Perhaps the person has lost confidence in the healthcare provider, or they've read something on Facebook, which seems to be primarily the way. Complacency is another reason. They do not see the need for a vaccine, or they don't see the value of it. Or sometimes it's just for convenience. They don't have access to it, or they do and just refuse to. The term existed since the invention of vaccination, but seems to predate the terms of vaccine and vaccination by nearly 80 years, which I don't quite understand, but apparently I've written that down. We'll go through that another time. Alan, you hit me with this because I know where we're going to go with this, but I want to hear what you got for this.
All right. Well, part of this was, you wanted me to list 3 things that I love or hate, and I've given you 2 that I loved, so I had to think of something that really fucks me off.
I respect that. It's the old shit sandwich, isn't it, mate?
Yeah. Why does this piss me off? Oh, fuck me, there's so much. I think the problem I have with the anti-vax movement is it's not that I think everybody needs to have a in-depth knowledge of medicine and science. You don't have to. I'm interested in science, but I'm certainly not scientifically minded. Like, you put me in a room with someone who's actually studied it properly, and I'm a moron in comparison, So
they studied it probably.
Probably studied. You put me in a room with someone who actually has studied any field of science, and I know nothing. Yeah, exactly. But that doesn't mean I'm not interested in it. I like watching the space rockets go up, and so I have an interest.
The rockets go up.
The rockets go up. Great. And they stay up.
How did they stay up? Oh, fuck me.
So my point is, I'm not going to be angry at someone because they don't understand the science behind a subject, and I don't expect everyone to spend every minute of the day reading through scientific journals to understand how vaccines work and why they're important. What I do expect people to do is use common sense, which is that if, and I'm assuming this is true for everybody who's listening to this, if you grew up at a time when you were being given tetanus jabs when you were a kid, And what else have we had? Like meningitis,
polio, etc.
You know, you've been given those sort of vaccines, and you can very easily look up in not even sort of distant history, but recent history, the effects that those diseases have had on people. If you've ever listened to Ian Dury and the Blockheads, like most people probably know Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick. Done a lot of songs, he's famous. Ian Dury constantly had to walk with a cane because he had polio when he was a kid and his leg didn't work. Like John Lydon, Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols, he nearly died as a child from meningitis. So, all right, those guys, and sadly Ian Dury's dead, but those guys, they might be slightly old, but they're all like, they're not ancient figures. And yet they are people who, as children, were so crippled by diseases that it had profound effects on their entire lives. So it's all within living memory, right? This is not about someone saying, like, just look at what polio did to us 500 years ago. Look at what it did to us 50 years ago. There are still people alive today on iron lungs because they can't breathe without it. So then when you have someone standing up and going like, oh, I don't think vaccines work, or I think vaccines are worse than the disease, it's like, we literally have people alive who can prove that that's bullshit. So that's what annoys me. You don't need to understand every facet of the science. You just need to be able to look at someone whose legs don't work and go, oh, well, that's annoying. What caused that? Yeah. Polio caused that.
Oh, that doesn't look good. Maybe I should not have that for my children and myself.
Exactly. I mean, so it's infuriating. You can go on the internet very easily and you can look at some fucking horrific photos of what happens when diseases that are still around, still commonly around, are left untreated. And I think, you can see, like, as we're recording this, like, coronavirus is still tearing its way through the fucking planet, and you can see how appallingly our government's handled it, how the medical community are shitting themselves over the fact that a vaccine is still not here. So I think you can kind of, from that, you should be able to see that if your government is spending quite a lot of money every year giving out vaccinations to children, that's a lot of effort, that's a lot of money. They don't like doing that shit. They are tight and they will cut corners anywhere they can. So if even those people who are currently crossing their fingers and hoping that coronavirus doesn't end the world are going, well, actually, maybe we should vaccinate against measles, maybe we should vaccinate against tetanus and so on. If those people think it's a good idea, then you have to question why someone would be like, nah, it's all a scam.
Yeah, I think the crux of it is, I mean, you and I come from a generation where we were given our CB something or other. I don't know what it was called now. It's 3 letters or something. Right. CGB, BGE, FBE, CBGBs. But yeah, and I know that I am lucky because I used to chuck myself into some bizarre situations when I was a kid. In the amount of times I'd hurt myself, scrape myself on something, stab myself or something, and I'm lucky that I don't have some horrific paralysis sort of thing. And like you say, you can easily go online and you can find just horrific pictures of people who are affected by polio, or people who are, just everything. There's like tetanus, which obviously leads to like lockjaw and things like that, and even worse, like diphtheria, things like that.
Tuberculosis. I mean,
tuberculosis, TB is still a fucking nasty thing.
I remember when like that film Angela's Ashes, the book, and then the film Angela's Ashes came out, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's amazing, it's amazing." It's like, yeah, that's what happens when you don't treat tuberculosis. It's like, right. It does a pretty good explanation why we tried to get rid of it. You see what happens.
Yeah.
And I find it weird how this stuff can be like, it can be literally in pop culture and still people are like, nah, it didn't happen. It's like, no, it did. It was awful.
It really did, yeah. And it's still a problem in countries who can't afford these vaccinations. So, especially in the Western world, count your fucking blessings and take it.
Yeah.
And stop your children dying.
So I don't want to get into the scientific areas quite so much because, firstly, I'm not qualified, and secondly, I don't think that's so important. When people argue about mercury and vaccines, it's like, well, it's a bit more complicated than that. Like a chemical being present can act differently in different situations depending on what it's combined with. So I understand how people see that as a bad thing. The drug in question is Thermosil, which contains some derivative of mercury, right? But the point is, I'm not going to get into an argument with someone about whether mercury is good or bad. Mercury is bad for you. Having a derivative of mercury in Thermosil is not a problem.
Yeah, but so is salt, so is alcohol, so is anything. Anything is bad for you.
Well, exactly. Hydrogen explodes unless it's water, So chemicals do different things.
We like that water as well, damn it.
The point is, you don't need to really look. It's not the science so much that bugs me. It's the fact that people look the blindingly obvious in the face and still decide that they would rather risk their child's life and, more importantly, risk other people's children's lives. Because if you don't vaccinate your child, you're risking that kid's life, but you're also risking the life of all the other kids it comes into contact with, even if they are vaccinated, because vaccines work on a herd immunity basis.
So the crux of it is it's more education. It's education about these things.
Yes.
And it's got to be clear and concise. So what would you say to those people who, and like we've seen a lot on Facebook, I mean, I've come across groups during my research, actual groups of people, and this really fucked me off, and I didn't know what to say, but it was a group of nearly 900,000 people who were very much anti-vax, and they were basically coming up with all these reasons. And it just reminded me of that Bill Bailey sketch where, like, people were just not educated, but he basically said, like, he was talking about the Taliban, for example, and he was just like, I don't know anything about Taliban, but I don't know anything about Afghanistan, but I just know that it's full of terrorists. Speaking as a mother. And that's basically what this whole group was like. They were literally just going, as a mother, I know exactly what I'm talking about. And I was just like, oh, you got to be fucking joking me.
Yeah, that is a big part of that. I feel like it is infuriating. Those people can be really annoying, but also writing them off as idiots and just being dismissive is not helpful, and it's not going to change their mind in anything.
No, 100%. I'm not saying they are idiots. I'm just saying they are uneducated, and the fact that they have these lovely little groups where they sit there and tell educated people who have gone through 10 plus years of medical training that they're wrong because of... And I don't understand that. Yeah, sure, form your own opinions and do what you want by all means, but in that case, lock yourself in a cave.
I mean, that is the problem, and this does fall into the sort of the conspiracy theory side of things. It is very much the sort of conspiratorial aspect that not only does the vaccine not work, that actually there's nefarious purposes for it, and so on. And once you start getting into that conspiratorial mindset, it's very easy to get lost in essentially what is an echo chamber of just, for example, you want to find out if a vaccine is going to be harmful to your child, so you go and search, are vaccines bad for my kid? And then essentially most of the results you'll find in Google will tell you that, yeah, they're terrible, and by the way, here's a group you can hang out with, and all these people will explain to you why.
All these people agree with you.
Yeah,
well done.
And a big part of it, I think, is like lack of critical thinking. I think people rightly should be very not wary, but people do need to scrutinize things. You shouldn't take everything at face value. It's entirely right that you question, is giving this vaccine for my child a good thing or a bad thing? Because no parent, and I say this, I'm not a parent, so I'm saying this from how I assume parents are, but I assume no parent would want to actually harm their kid or do something that harmed their kid and then be like, well, actually, everyone was telling me don't do it, and I didn't listen. So I completely understand why they can be extremely wary and why they feel that there's so much information it can be very difficult to decide what's true and what isn't. I mean, there's a lot of anti-vax stuff over the years, but if we look at the most sort of obvious recent one regarding the MMR jab, whether that causes autism or not, and we look at sort of the history of that, and I think a huge amount of responsibility has to be leveled at the media, who essentially gave Dr. Andrew Wakefield all the platform he craved. And there was no analysis of his work, which was shoddy. And like I say, as I've said previously, like, I'm interested in science, but I'm in no way qualified in it. But even I read his, like, the synopsis of his research paper and was like, this is bullshit. You know, he was doing, well, he was doing medical experiments on kids without the consent of their parents, which is a big no-no, and that's why he got struck off the register. I believe he is struck off. I think that was the final reason they gave. But if you look at like just the basic synopsis of what he was suggesting, it's like, this is terrible science. And the paper where it was published, I believe, in the Lancet, because the Lancet was it the Lancet or was it another scientific magazine? No, sorry, New Scientist. I believe it was published in New Scientist, but it hadn't been peer reviewed at that point, so it should never have been published, as far as I'm concerned. And then he's suddenly on all like the early morning chat shows giving his side of things. It's like, well, this isn't helpful. And it wouldn't have taken more than 5 minutes to do a background check on this guy and realize that he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And when you're looking at, you know, the health of children, having a random bloke going on the news and being treated as a reliable source of information shouldn't be allowed. So, yeah, I do have I get very annoyed with anti-vax parents. It is difficult arguing with people about this stuff, but we have to put the blame somewhere for where this all started, and a big part of it is the media was so obsessed with chasing a story that they never stopped to check whether this guy was obviously full of shit or not. And the results speak for themselves. Kids are dying as a result of not being vaccinated against measles, mumps, and rubella.
Mate, I have no qualms with anything you've said there. I think the crux of this is it's maybe not so much anti-vaxxers as such, but more like the lack of education, or more so the media, and how the media has a lot of control. People still use all these media outlets as their source of information, which it still baffles me sometimes. You know, some people take it as absolute gospel, for want of a better term, you know, and I still find that weird. You know, surely you would still do some research, but again, like we said, that can lead down the rabbit hole of, you know, yeah.
For me, okay, so granted, when we started this, I said my gripe was anti-vaxxers, and it is, quite frankly.
Do you think it's changed now more
No.
No?
It hasn't changed. I want to say my gripe is not against like the parent who's a bit confused and hasn't vaccinated their child. My gripe is against the what is now a huge money-making industry that's intent on pushing out complete nonsense about vaccinations that is literally killing people. It's causing so much death, and you know, you don't have to even kill people. Like, a lot of these diseases won't kill you, but will fuck you up seriously. Like, you know, you get brain damage, you end up losing limbs, all kinds of horrible things happen. And this is not, as it's sort of quite often portrayed, a few like mums sitting around in a coffee shop debating whether vaccines work. That this is an industry now, because there is money in doing stuff. Basically, there's money in getting press coverage. It's a sort of self-serving, self-facilitating machine where if you talk enough shit, and we're saying this on a podcast, so hooray for that, but if you talk enough shit, you then get on TV, you get paid, and then you generate money by just being full of shit. And that's what I have the problem with that. I think from the perspective of whether, like, how parents should be treated, I think we need way better critical thinking education. I think we need to be taught to question stuff, but we also need to know how to see through the bullshit.
Fair play, mate. Fair play, dude. I think we're going to have to wrap this up. Allan, thank you, dude, so much for your time. I think anti-vaxxers and that whole sort of thing is definitely getting in the sea. There is no way that cannot get in the sea. That needs to be in the sea, and I'm going to throw pebbles at it. Actually, big blocks of stone from the safety of the sea, of the shore, and make sure it sinks, basically. Yeah, so anti-vaxxers going in the sea, mate. Thank you very much for discussing that with me, and thank you very much for your time overall, dude. Anything you want to promote, speak about? Yeah.
I mean, we've given enough promotion to Pixar, so that's fine. I check out my band. There you go.
Okay.
Which is Weekend Death Cult.
Weekend Death Cult, ladies and gentlemen. I might even end the episode with a bit of Weekend Death Cult. I will trawl through Allan's stuff and see if there's a 3-minute pop song. Which I know there's not going to be a 3-minute pop song, but
I mean, that's pretty long for a track, isn't it?
Okay, I'll sellotape 2 or 3 together in a mix. Thanks to Allan for getting involved in this. Thank you for tuning in. This is the end of the show, and we're really happy to have the Gremlins choir doing some vocals. Woo-wee! This show was written, produced, engineered, recorded, dribbled over, and obsessed over in a very short time by Benedict Harris Hayes for Oceanic Audio Productions. If you took offence or want to complain about anything within the podcast, please send me a letter and I will file it in the bin. Bye.